Hi, my name is Jake Spurlock. I'm a technical account manager on the VIP team, and I'm also the core security release lead on the WordPress open source project. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about WordPress security and kind of what goes into making WordPress a secure product for 34% of the internet, and a little bit about what the release process looks like, and a little bit in how people can contribute to security. And yeah, open up to questions and stuff after that too. So first off, the core security team, in collaboration with the WordPress core leadership team and backed by the WordPress global community, works to identify and resolve security in issues in the core software available for distribution and installation at WordPress.org, as well as recommending and documenting security best practices for third-party plugin and theme authors. If you go to WordPress.org, there's a whole security page that really kind of details the full layout of what the security team is and what the goals and the objectives are. But this is kind of a very high level. In addition to the to WordPress itself, we also maintain security. We call it the Meta Security Project. So we also oversee all of the like Track and the WordPress core project, like the different blogs, the SVN, like kind of all of those things into it, and kind of encompassing all of WordPress. So going to talk a little bit about that. So our main primary way that we work with the community is through a program called HackerOne. Just a show of hands, has anybody heard of HackerOne? A few people here. So HackerOne is a place where people can securely disclose vulnerabilities in popular projects. And it's not just WordPress, obviously, but it's GitHub, it's Microsoft, it's Facebook. All of these different programs have dedicated places inside of HackerOne where you can disclose vulnerabilities. So our HackerOne program covers the core software as well as a variety of related projects and infrastructure. So as a few examples, I mentioned this briefly, but the core software, the APIs, the website, Gutenberg, WP-CLI, BuddyPress, BBPress, GlotPress, and even the WordCamp.org websites. So all of the websites in WordCamp. One of the nice things about HackerOne is it allows us basically a place for the WordPress community to, I'm going to share these slides, and so I just put these links on here for people to follow up later. But if you go to /WordPress, you kind of see the program at a glance. You can see the items that are in scope. If you look at the Hacktivity page, you'll see items that have been addressed, vulnerabilities that have been disclosed. On the thanks page, you can see hackers that have been thanked. And on the updates, you can see where we have addressed items that are going to be updated. Wanted to talk about a few publicly disclosed security vulnerabilities and kind of what they look like. So this is a meta example. This is something that came in to an issue about Track itself. And Track is where the WordPress open source project hosts its code, has the issues for WordPress. And somebody came in, this person, MyGF, they submitted an issue that said they found a stored XSS vulnerability. And for those that don't know what stored XSS is a cross-site scripting, is what XSS stands for. Somebody was able to input some JavaScript, which was then reflected onto the page. And so you can see here, you go to core.track.wordpress.org, create a new ticket, and then paste in this payload. For somebody that's done a little bit of WordPress development, you can see, aha, I know what they did here. They forgot to sanitize the output. And so if we look right here, we're closing an attribute off. We're injecting an SVG into the page. And then inside of that SVG, we are doing this alert document domain. Now, the alert document domain is really just a proof of concept. In theory, you could insert any kind of JavaScript code into this page. That JavaScript code could steal cookies and then send it to another server. It could do all kinds of malicious things. But as a proof of concept, it was just doing an alert. Click the Enter button, and you will see an XSS alert. Copy the URL, go to a private window, and you'll see that. And this is reflected. This is a disclosed report here, this HackerOne URL. So the security team, we get this vulnerability, and it's our job now to triage the problem. So you can see this is a change set into the WordPress meta instance here. And we can see there's this prepend tag, and rather than using the HTML attribute, we're going to use the proper attribute jQuery, which will sanitize that variable and make it so that you can't do that into core. And then this was committed. So this is a way to securely disclose the vulnerability. We were able to patch the issue, and then we're able to roll this out to the users. It's kind of interesting. After this issue was disclosed, we got this flood of spam into Trac of everybody trying 8 million different ways to expose this same vulnerability again. Obviously, that's not what we want. And so we have a nice little disclosure that says, please do not pen test Trac. And there's a way to download Trac and do it. I mentioned that updates page. WordPress 5.3 is coming out next week. We published an update that says, as the betas for 5.3 have been released, this is a month ago or so, we double the bounties on security vulnerabilities related to new features coming in new releases. So we published this update that says, if you have a security disclosure that's related to the 5.3 update, we will pay double our bounty for all security vulnerabilities. And so we can publish this to everybody that has disclosed a vulnerability in the past. So we kind of have a big list of hackers that have contributed to the WordPress core project. And then we can also have this public for anybody else that's thinking about contributing to WordPress. So it's time to ship. 5.3, like I said, is around the corner. So we kind of have a project. We manage things. Normally when we're doing security releases, we don't ship them with major releases. If you follow WordPress closely, 5.2.4 came out 2 weeks ago. 5.2.3 came about 6 weeks before that. Normally we're going to do security releases on not on a major release, but with a dot release. So we won't see any security fixes in 5.3, but 5.3.1, you could probably expect some security fixes. So we bring all of the changes from GitHub and we commit them to SVN. We then backport all of those issues from 5.3 all the way back to 3.7. So right now we're over 16 major versions of WordPress are covered with security updates. And part of this, which is kind of interesting from a WordPress and WordPress.com and VIP, is we stage all of these commits ahead of time onto our different platforms. So that if there is a vulnerability, we make sure to patch it internally, we can test it internally, and once it passes our test process, when it's time to flip the switch, we are ready to go. So if our merges are all done, we tag the version, we package the version, we test the downloads, we use WP CLI, we use automatic downloads, manual updates, and then we handle a release inside of Mission Control, and then we release the update. And then we're done. So kind of how a WordPress security update goes. Any questions? I know this is kind of a very high-level approach to WordPress security, but I'd be happy to answer a few questions.
Why SVN? So the legacy code's all SVN?
Yeah, all of the WordPress project is all in SVN. And so we mirror all of the SVN code over to GitHub also. So if you're a developer and you want to work on core, you can use Git if you want, and you can patching and stuff like that can all be done. But the main development environment, which is Trac, is all based on SVN. And so we still are heavily reliant on SVN, both for releases, for patches, for kind of all of that. Yeah. Tess?
So with the bounties for HackerOne, it's an open source project. Who's paying for those?
That's a great question. We'll say the WordPress Open Source Foundation is paying for those. Where that check comes from, that's TBD, but the Open Source Foundation is paying for it. Yeah, it's interesting too, and this is just, I'm going to be candid here for a second. If you look at like Facebook or Apple, their bounties are astronomical. Like you release, you find some bounty inside of like iMessage, that's $50,000, $75,000, like huge number of bounties. You will not get rich contributing to our security program. It will bring you infamy, and what do you really want is that, right? For the most part, the people that work in that space, they're not really doing it for money, but if they're a part of a security research firm, they're doing it to find the answers and to receive the notoriety for finding and fixing those problems. So that's generally the type of people that are are disclosing these vulnerabilities. If it's black hat, they're going to be black hat, but this program is built for white hat style people. Other questions?
How often do you do a new release as you use Git?
So just being candid again, we've been trying to accelerate our program a little bit. So we have a small backlog that we're trying to get through. And with that, we have, I'm trying to get us on a regular release cadence so that we're part of all of the maintenance releases that come out. So when 5.3.1 comes out, we'll probably add some stuff to that. But 5.2.4 that came out 2 weeks ago, that was just a security-only release. And so it didn't have any maintenance fixes that are part of the, that would have been part of 5.2. But I foresee us doing a lot of that in the future, more security releases. And there is a stigma in WordPress for people that they see a release and they're like, why is WordPress always updating? I was part of a session at WordCamp US over the weekend about making auto updates a lot easier, a lot simpler, and more akin to, I hate to say like Firefox or Chrome, where they just kind of happen in the background. You don't worry about it. You're not worried about the version that you're on, but they just happen, and it's just part of the process of running normal software today. Yes?
How do you determine how far back you go?
So you determine how far back you go by how far back you can go. So as an example, let's say something in Gutenberg. We're only going to go back to version 5 because that's where Gutenberg was introduced. And then we're kind of bookmarking it other places. So if it's REST API related, it's going to go back to 4.4. If it's part of Customizer, it's going to go all the way back to 3.7. We stop at 3.7 because 3.7 is when auto updates were introduced. And it's kind of this thing where it's like, well, because we can, we do. Not necessarily because we have to, but we can, and so we do go all the way back as far as we can. At some point, I would like to not do that, and there are some updates that may change that in the future, but we'll see. Yeah.
Just having some knowledge about how version control works, do you actually try to automate those, like going back in time, or is that like an engineer that's reviewing every single one for every version?
So yes, that would be great, right? Have an automated testing procedure that would allow us to, bring it back to every version. The system right now is in Git. I basically have a tagged version, so I have like a 3.7, a 3.8, a 3.9, and I have all of the commits on trunk, like on a pull request, and I cherry pick those commits into a tagged version, and basically just let our automated testing work on those tagged versions. As a way to stage, and then when it comes time to release, I just do the SVN commits over. So in theory, it's gone through the entire WordPress testing framework already, but it's not really automated in the cherry pick the commits over to different branches. That's something I'm working on right now to make it a little easier. Because one of the questions that kind of came up is like, why are we spending so much time on backports? Like, do we need to? And that's kind of along like, it's not that hard, so we do it, but it could be even easier. Do you have a question? So the security team is managed, it's about 50 people right now, but those 50 people are largely core contributors that are part of the security team by virtue of being core committers and stuff like that. I would say the active people are around 5 to 10 fairly active people, also core contributors and stuff like that. That's generally about the size of our security team. Yes?
I'm curious how plugin vulnerabilities factor in which is obviously it's not before but what if they're like a very common use plugin comes up with a pretty good vulnerability? Is that something that falls under your purview?
So technically, no. Plugin vulnerabilities are handled by the plugins team. So if there is a plugin vulnerability, the way that that's disclosed is to plugins@wordpress.org, and it's kind of handled by that team. I have kind of coordinated a few things in my position to help with some other things, to update some plugins and push out some updates, but that's generally handled by the plugins team. Once again, just kind of the scope, if it's BuddyPress, if it's bbPress, kind of those core WP CLI, those kind of core things that are adjacent to WordPress, that's part of our team, but not all-in-one SEO or whatever else. Yes, sir.
WordPress, and I visited a WordPress site and I noticed that it was modern. Now, what version does it get to be modern in terms of running React on the background?
So, I mean, you could be running React on 4.4. You could be running React on 5.3. The Gutenberg starts with version 5, so React in the backend is going to be on 5.0. Excuse me. But I know a site that I developed a million years ago was early version of the REST API on like 4.2 or so. So it's just kind of depends on how the site was built and what version it's running. Yeah. All right. Well, I think I'm out of time, but thank you for all the questions, and I'm here all night.